The International Chamber of Commerce Sri Lanka is the national office of the Paris-based business organization. The ICC comprises of membership of 45 million members in 130 countries. Trade facilitation, export and import and cross-border trade and issues relating to freight forwarding and many other matters of importance are addressed by the ICC. ICC Sri Lanka works through several committees to debate, discuss and suggest solutions on subjects related to the mandate of the Chamber. Each of these commissions are led by professionals in the committee, with many committees functioning. ICC includes a membership committee, International Relations Committee, Policy and Advocacy Committee, Training and Development Committee, Banking Committee. ICC is the sole authorized guaranteeing agency for ATIA. It's an internationally accepted customs document which enables duty-free and tax-free temporary importation of items as commercial samples. The ATIA reduces costs and red tape. The ICC is also known for its popular publications invaluable for bankers, lawyers, arbitrators and anyone involved in cross-border trade. Its members are provided with a members privilege card which includes discounts with multiple retailers. ICC Sri Lanka's vision is to be the organization of choice to advance international trade and investment for businesses in Sri Lanka. ICC Sri Lanka's mission is to be the change agent in national policy formulation and implementation and facilitator of global businesses with Sri Lanka and disseminator of information on the development of business utilizing the services of ICC Paris while continuing to be a facilitator of dispute resolution. In addition, the ICC Sri Lanka organizes seminars, lectures, meetings with business leaders, and gives recognition to Sri Lankan businesses for outstanding achievements. ICC can play a special role in connecting business to the world and be a driving force for all Sri Lankan businesses.
Insurance is for those who play it safe? We don't think so. Ever since we started Allianz in 1890, we've been with those who cross borders, oceans, continents. We're with those who know there is no success, no fun, no living without daring. Or a family. Those who grow with fate and failure, even more than with success. We share their triumphs and their tragedies. That is what we were founded for. We can give reassurance because we are financially strong and our entire business is built for resilience. We can give guidance based on confidence. We understand our business and the lives and needs of our clients. We act with integrity, speak with sincerity, and deliver on our promises. Everything we do encourages you to take life into your own hands. So go ahead. Dare to. We're with you.
If you seek for business, look for insightful. If you seek for politics, look for anticipation. If you value lifestyle, look for the extraordinary. If you love sports, look for the passion. Daily FT. Be empowered.
Good afternoon. I'm Shanil Fernando, Secretary, International Chamber of Commerce and Vice President, Association of Clearing and Forwarding Agents, and would like to welcome you to the ICC webinar series on supply chain and trade facilitation. The supply chain was a critical element during the COVID lockdown period, as some factories were working during the curfew. Even we were working with 52 curfew passes around the clock as an essential service to move the containers in and out of the port. We need to make contingency plans for the future for similar situations on supply chain to run without major disruptions, as we are not sure when the COVID is going to be over. This webinar is on the issues faced by the import and export industries affecting their supply chain during the COVID crisis and how to overcome them in the future. ICC Paris coordinates a very vibrant trade facilitation committee that operates in 130 countries with 48 million ICC members around the world. ICC Sri Lanka has brought foreign experts for the Incoterms 2020 training in Sri Lanka to facilitate international trade. The country of origin certificates were issued electronically by ICC that facilitated the exporters during the curfew period. To attract foreign investments to Sri Lanka, the index on the ease of doing business will be the first thing that a foreign investor would look into before investing in the country. We need to promote a paperless process similar to Singapore. The BOI and the customs facilitated this during the COVID curfew period. We request both of these institutions to continue these best practices and to facilitate a total paperless import and export entry passing and verification process, at least for green card holders. The ICC Banking Committee, which represents all the banks in Sri Lanka, was very active during the COVID lockdown period, with the new import gazette restricting some of the non-essential imports and LC issues they faced. Some of our members had restrictions on some imports that are processed for 100% export due to the new gazette of the import control. ICC was successful in making representation on behalf of its members to the Director General of Customs and the Secretary of the Treasury, which was later resolved. We have some suggestions by the ICC members, which we will take it up later. Over to you, Mr. Nisra Kasim, our moderator.
I thank you very much. Welcome to everyone on behalf of Daily FTA and ICC, also our sponsor Allianz. We have a big panel today, and it's very difficult to manage such a distinguished but long panel. So what we are trying to do is take as many questions as possible. Even when soon after the forum was announced, we got lots of questions. So I will take some of them as well as other questions which we have developed internally. For the benefit of great interaction, I would suggest all the panelists to give as answers to the point and short as possible, depending on the situation. I'd like to thank everyone for spending their time with us today. So I'll start off with the import-export control team, which is very much in discussion these days. And before I ask the first question, I just want to tell that we will focus this issue from more supply. Ms. Karunaratna, I'd like to ask you, the common complaint is that all these shipments had been made much earlier, before the restrictions, before the COVID, but there is this sense of
government has to take quick decision to control dollar rate. So that's why central bank and import and export control department issued the two regulations. Then after that, in addition to the control in dollar rate, the government wants to protect local farmer, local industry, and health and environment. So the two regulations have been issued to address those issues. Then I think you all have aware the two gazettes now. Recently we have issued new regulations on 30th of June. Then I think it is better if you could explain about that gazette. I think we could address in this regulation some few issues. I think I will describe one by one. There are some we try to address two issues of middlemen. There are some definitions to mentioned some words such as indirect importer and flagship project, etc. So middleman, indirect importers issues have been solved. Then I think there are clear definitions are there. We try to submit definition to local value addition. There's a formula. I think it is very clear to importers and exporters who are engaged with the trade sector. So the most important thing is in this gazette mentioned the validity period of the barriers. Then earlier it is planned to end July 14th of July. So in this gazette we mentioned it is change until further notice. That means we can't say when it will be finished. So then there were some changes from the item list. One is refrigerators which used for industrial purpose. It has been removed from the TS list, and the household washing machine and the chillers also released from the credit list. I think there are some few changes, dried ginger considering the Ayurvedic purpose, and few other changes are there. So I think it will be addressed to the remaining issues of the trade sector. So still I can say some issues are there we couldn't address it, but I think near future we can be addressed to the remaining issues. So I think I invite to okay.
Thank you. I'll just take the issue about what about the consignments that have already, the foreign exchange has already been paid and they are already in port. Why couldn't both the department and the customs sort of agree that these will be cleared without any penalization? I mean, why was that very simple decision not taken? We already remittance.
Instruction has been issued to release. There are some few operation instructions. One for vehicle already imported before 16th of June. Then they have taken 360 days credit period. So after that, in that gazette, we try to address the items which are already reached to customs, also removed.
What about
We can, yes, operating instruction 7/2020. Sri Lanka Customs shall permit to clear the goods on advance payment which is made for the value of total invoice before 18th of April 2020.
Okay, that's good. The April 18th, any particular reason why April 18th was fixed? Any particular reason?
It is our first gazette.
Gazette. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll come back to you, Mrs.
Okay.
Ratna. I'll move on to, you have more questions, so I'm sure there'll be more questions coming up. I'll move on to the Central Bank Deputy Director, Mr. Prasanna.
Hello.
Thank you. I just want you to put it in context how Central Bank is sort of minimizing the inconveniences. There's so much of confusion as to how about the various requirements. How have you all simplified the Central Bank input in this whole challenge of controlling foreign exchange outflow?
Of course, I'm representing the Foreign Exchange Department.
Yeah.
You know that Central Bank, there are so many other departments too.
Yes.
So, of course, I think your question is with regard to the management of the foreign exchange flows.
That's
in the
right.
middle of this particular crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, I can just start with this the first direction that what we issued on 19th March, where of course we refer to a particular schedule which was issued under the Banking Act. Okay, you call it Schedule B, which we identified certain non-essential items to be imported. So what we did was that we of course issued a directions instructing banks to not to make payments for those non-essential goods for the on the DP and open accounts basis, while the Bank Supervision Department referring to a Schedule A and also the Schedule B issued under the Banking Act, they of course instructed the bank by a different direction to restrict the payment on the DA, LC, DA and LC terms and advance payments too. So this was one of the measures that we had to immediately introduce when we even find that it is necessary to address the manage the foreign exchange flows. If not, that will have some negative impact on the exchange rate. And from our department also, we of course took several measures, but they are not relating to import matters.
Thank you very much. This question is about, according to the Section 4, exports proceeds should be brought back to Sri Lanka by 60 days. But Central Bank requirement says 180 days from shipment. How can this be resolved in terms of, can you extend the period to 180 days? Or can you sort of incentivize exports to bring it much earlier?
Yeah, of course, you are correct that we issued a Gazette notification in 2019, October 17, requiring the merchandise exporters to bring the export proceeds within 180 days from the date of exportation.
Yes.
So it was issued not very in the near term, in the near recent past, but it was issued in somewhere in October 2019. Prior to which this was, the requirement was 120 days with a 30 days grace period.
Okay.
Even prior to that, this was a 90 days period. So you can see that the time to time we have been, extending it up to 180 days. Okay. Now I understand that, in the recent, the gazette issued by the Import Control Department requires that the importers who import raw materials for export processing and need to repatriate this, export their earnings within, I think it is as per the 30th gazette, it is 120 days, I guess,
Okay.
even though you are referring to 60 days.
Yeah.
Yes. But, sometimes you might see that the 180 days and 120 days, two different requirements. How can the exporters comply with? So my simple understanding is that, this is importers who import goods for export processing, only a subgroup of the entire community of exporters, because there are exporters that who are exporting goods without having much of the import materials, who have to bring this money only within the 180 days maximum. But it doesn't say that they can't bring it money even further, even they can within 1 month or so. But the maximum limit they have been permitted to repatriate export 180 days.
Okay.
And also that you were talking about some of the incentives also. And in fact, in the recent time, I mean, that was on the 4th March 2020, the Bank Supervision Department has also issued a direction that the exporters, of course, who get the credit facilities from the banks, can repatriate their export proceeds within 180 days, whereas it was 120 days previously. So, but all I can say is that these two directions are in place, even despite these regulation issued by the Import and Export Control Department. So that's what I can tell you.
Right. Thank you. Just before I go to another panelist, Mr. Prasanna, what about the entrepreneur trade? What rules apply to the entrepreneur trade?
Yes, of course. When you say the entrepreneur trade, we of course identify this entrepreneur trade as a form of current international transactions, because for the purpose of cross-border transactions, we identify transactions are twofold. One is a current international transaction, other is the capital international transaction. This, the intraport transactions would fall into the current international transaction. So therefore, we have clearly mentioned that the payment for importation of goods for re-export purposes under interport trade are permitted without restriction through the banking system, subject to the trade policy of the government. So I hope that this restriction, whatever the recently issued, will not be applicable to the entrepreneur trade, because whatever the goods imported into the entrepreneur trade are not released by the Sri Lankan customs. I mean, people will not bring them into the country. So it may not be the form of an importation for the purpose of the Import and Export Control Act. So therefore, the goods are, imported between the countries, or sometimes they reach the country and will be held only in a bonded warehouse. So I think these transactions are not necessarily can be interpreted as a import. So therefore, it's sort of a facilitating trade services. So therefore, they can freely go ahead with this transaction, in my opinion, but it has to be further clarified by the Import and Export Control Department.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Prasanna. We'll come back to you if there are some further questions. I'd like to move on to the Board of Investment team, leading with Executive Director, Mr. Mahinda Ramanayaka. I just want to know, how is BOI, because they're so confused. So there was some confusion about imported inputs for BOI companies, and then all these payment terms and all that. How is BOI, what has been the situation for BOI companies, and how have you facilitated that situation?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. With regard to the new gazettes regulation, so I am talking with regard to the import and export control regulation number 3, which was issued on 30th June. So in this gazette, there are 3 types of exporters. So they are discussing about 3 types of exporters. TEEP exporters, BOI exporters, and any exporters registered under the customs schemes. So those are the 3 types of exporters. In this also they have included direct exporters as well as indirect exporters. So I am going to make few comments with regard to the import related to these exporters. So in this new gazette notification, they have mentioned very clearly that the exporters should make a declaration before they import, right? At the time of import, any item, so they have to make a declaration with regard to the inward remittance that they have received on quarterly basis. So 3 types of information that they have to mention: remittance received at the beginning, at the end, and within the quarter. So those are the 3 types. So then these exporters must submit these details quarterly basis to BOI, customs, and EDB. So then they are more comfortable than the previous gazette. Here they are more flexible. Provisions are there. And then in nutshell, so if I explain you about the commitment that exporters should make when they import the raw material or machinery that they require for the production. So there are three requirements, very clear. So first one, when they import, they have to submit the exchange receivable statement. So what are the export proceeds that they have received? So they have to keep on submitting that. Number 2, so 20% local value addition. So not on consignment basis. So generally, what is the local value addition that they make with their normal operation? So number 3, so they have to bring the export proceeds within 120 days, not more than 120 days. So those are the 3 requirements every exporter must declare to the customs, BOI, and EDB when they import raw material. So they are very comfortable. In addition to that, so I explain you about the regulation 4 of this gazette, but regulation 6 is more comfortable. In this 6, they have very clearly mentioned, so any restriction regarding this gazette is not applicable to the exporters when they import their project related item. So how they are going to import their project related item? Under these 2 types of payment. Number 1 is NFP. If any exporter is going to import their required item, project related item, on NFP basis. So NFP means the cargo is coming to Sri Lanka, but no remittance is going out, no outward remittance. So we call that NFP basis. So if anybody is importing any item on NFP basis, so they can bring without applicable, without any restriction of this gazette. Then the second one, so if anybody is going to settle the remittance, settle the payment, settle the bill, import bill with their export proceed from their FCBU account, also they are flexible. So they don't have any problem with their positive balance. They can proceed. They can send the proceeds. So those are the 2 main characteristics with regard to import of raw material and machinery for the exporter. So I would like to invite Mr. Vijayakula Tilaka, our Executive Director Investment, to explain more about the other points.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mahendra. So I'll proceed. And so as you correctly said, we have a little harder time in the very inception when the introduction of this import control gazette. But now Ms. Karunaratne has made our life easy by issuing this new gazette on 30th June. Most of the cases have been resolved now. And the main issue was early, not for the exporters, because that initially it was a little harder, but in the second gazette, and now they have announced only 60 days export proceeds and 20% local value addition. So 99% export-oriented companies having the 20% value addition. Otherwise, that cannot be considered as an export-oriented company. So then they have relaxed that one, and the people who are bringing on NFE basis also relaxed. Only issue was there in the previous gazette in May 21st on these items coming under the category of Schedule 1 for the local market oriented project. That has been resolved right now in the new gazette. What they have given as a solution now, whichever comes under Schedule 1, that can be brought into the country and cleared within, if there's a credit facility of 90 days. And they're given a very exception provision if the company is operating under the BOI, and if anyone give a commitment that company is making commencement of commercial operation 31st of October in this year, so then they can, the BOI, the board of directors and chairman can, and the DG can release the goods within this new gazette issued on 30th of June. And there's another facility as given in the local market oriented companies. In the previous gazette, they say only for the raw material, if you have a justification for 35% of value addition, you can bring to the country with a 60 days credit period. But now this time it has been further relaxed by reducing 30 days credit period, but keeping the 35% of local value addition. And at the same time, previously under Schedule 2, it says other than the restricted items, you can bring within 90 days credit and using 180 days credit when they don't have the foreign exchange savings. But this has been further relaxed, and by so they leaving that into two categories, and Schedule 2 for the manufacturing categories still 30% value addition or within 90 days. So then those are the relaxation given by new gazette. Only as you correctly said, few issues are there. There are few items like salt imported by manufacturers for not for the commercial consumption but for the production process have a little issues because it is in the negative list. Yeah, that has also been resolved by the tariff committee. Other than that, only pending issues, there are few companies they have imported prior to the gazette date, so that has been pending. But our management and with the tariff committee, they are taking one by one, depending on the case, they are trying to resolve.
Okay, thank you. I have two follow-up questions. One is, what about the imports by the strategic development projects coming under Strategic Development Act? That is one. Yeah. And also, this is again about commercial hub operations. They also do import. What kind of a foreign currency exchange regulation does it impact for them? So one is on the Strategic Development Act projects, and whether you can share some insights.
And now previous cassettes talk about the flagship projects.
That's right.
Flagship project is now this time there was no definition given in the previous cassette, but this cassette has clearly defined what are the larger projects. Say if you take companies given any such investment of $100 million and above, or generating 500 employment, and so if generating $50 million per annum as a foreign exchange earnings, so those have been identified as flagship projects. But so that this will not affect the SDB project.
Yeah. With regard to the second question that you asked, with regard to the import of commercial hub companies, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe you are aware that commercial hub companies are governed by the Finance Act and commercial hub regulation. So that is the relevant regulation. Very clearly, it has been mentioned that this any import related to the commercial hub companies are exempted from 3 laws: Custom Ordinance, Exchange Control, and also Import-Export Control Act. So therefore, this is not relevant to them. Any import coming to the hub is not to the Sri Lankan territory, so it is outside the Sri Lankan territory. Therefore, they have no any issue whether it is imported by the commercial hub company or third party. It is not relevant to them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Prasanna, how would you justify that kind of arrangement? Because there is still an outflow of foreign exchange happening in that context. Any thoughts on that? Also, the the large flagship projects are fairly, I'm not undermining the investment projects, but here your challenge is about managing the outflow of forex. How is central bank? How is your explanation for that?
Of course, as you said, that the commercial hub thing was introduced under a different regulation issued under the Finance Act, and if it has been accepted from the certain laws, of course we will not have our authority. And I think the other thing is that certain this particular regulation issued by the Import-Export Department says that they can, as far as the BOI companies are concerned, they can, they have been accommodated. I think they have permitted to import using the FDIs. I think that if they are using the foreign sources to import their particular materials, that will not have sort of an impact on the foreign exchange market. And at the same time, if they are also using their foreign exchange earnings to import their material requirements, they will also not come to the domestic foreign exchange market. Thereby, there will not be a sort of a pressure on the foreign exchange rate. So if it has been, I think apparently they have taken measures to not to bring any undue pressure on the foreign exchange rate by allowing them to use their foreign sources and also their foreign savings.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. I'd like to move on to the customs team, starting Mr. Javardhana, Director of Customs. I think during the COVID, there was a lot of progress in terms of e-facilitation. And I think as a country, the various digital options were harnessed during the COVID and during the shutdown. Of course, with the gradual reopening of the country, there is some concerns about, one is customs hasn't really hadn't really gone ahead with further facilitation of paperless process. Any thoughts you have in terms of response to what the industry is concerned about?
Yes. Now, in case of this paperless process that we facilitated during the COVID period, it was purely to facilitate the clearance of cargo, because we had to employ minimum number of staff and we couldn't do much of examination of cargo. But we had a lot of clearance from cargo. The port was full of cargo, I think not cleared during 2-3 months, so that we have to expedite that. So even though the law did not permit that type of online facility, we did it just to accommodate that situation. Because in case of our law, actually now at the moment the government is trying to change the required law in our ordinance to accommodate pre-arrival customs submission and also online submission completely. But the present law requires the custom to be submitted only after the arrival of the vessel. Until such time the ship comes to the port and discharge the goods, it is not legal to submit a custom. So that is one. And at the same time, we have to have a hard copy document to authorize the delivery under the present law. So that we need hard copies for everything. So once these amendments come into the effect, I think most probably the next parliament will do it. So I think the amendments are ready, but it should be approved by the parliament. So once those are approved, definitely we can go for pre-arrival submission of custody. Before the vessel comes, we can submit it. At the same time, we can do online submission completely without any documentation for processing. So that is possible.
Okay. given you think the clearance has come back to normal, or fact that there is still much more to be cleared, whether you can continue with that e-facilitation?
No, there's no much of remaining because most of the goods were cleared, and
Okay.
now my view is that we are running a lesser amount of clearance at the moment.
Okay, right. What were the key learnings? Because knowing the modernization of the customs law has been pending for years and years, you're very confident that the next parliament will pass it. But what would be what were the key learnings where you feel that the customs there was some new learning on e-facilitation during the COVID time, and where
electronic processing of customs that was ready with our ICD division for a long time, but we couldn't implement it because of the legal barriers.
Okay.
But during the COVID time, they put into practice because even though it is not legal, we use that opportunity to test run it. So it is working. So once the legal backing is there, we have it fully operational.
Okay. Just want to get your insight about what's the kind of mindset within the customs having a lot of paperless processing. Now you shifting back to paper. What has been the general mindset of the staff in terms of, are they much more efficient in terms of facilitating a quicker process? Because they have been empowered technologically earlier.
Yes. Now, once you put it with the legal backing,
okay,
so there's no going back. So you have to go forward.
Okay.
It will happen definitely.
Thank you very much. I move on to the industry now. I know we have a few pending, but I want to ask. Oh, no, I sorry. Before I come to the private sector, I have to because we are missing the presence of General Ratnayaka, but we have Mr. Upul Jayatissa, Director Logistics. Mr. Jayatissa, in terms of, I know port had lots of challenges. And I just want to know what were the key issues you all faced, and then how did you all rectify some of these issues during the COVID, and have you resolved in terms of the demurrage issues and various other allegations about shippers and consignees and agents, freight forwarders and shipping lines passing the ball in terms of demurrage and payments?
Yes, good evening. So the initial challenge for the port was the clearance of the backlog of cargo piled up just after the COVID period. That means first to clear about the FCL. So we had about 28,000 containers lying in March, and also a backlog of 1,800 LCL containers piled up in the port due to the COVID of various issues with the documentation, clearance and customs, so many other matters. But SLPA with the ministry took the initiative and took the leadership. And we had a lot of discussions with our stakeholders, shipping lines, freight forwarding, fraternity, and the trucking. So Ports Authority took the lead and made the facilitation for them to come to get the curfew passes, come to the port to make it normal. But port operations went uninterrupted. We had ship handling, cargo discharging, loading, everything happened smoothly from the seafront. Yes. But the land side, cargo delivery receiving was the issue. But with the stakeholders and especially the customs and specifically the shipping lines, they came forward with the new, paperless, starting with the EDO, e-delivery order, right? We managed to clear all the backlog. And if you say now, there is no backlog at all. About 5,000 containers are lying normal in all three terminals, SFCL, and LCL has come down to almost 40 TUs. So that means, as you understand, but we had a very sharp drop in our handling due to this one. And as long as the restrictions are, as long as the global situation, the regional situation, we feel the impact. But now from last month, onward we see a recovery. Number of ships coming. The loss is now gradually slowed down, and the import also gradually exports picking up. So that was the situation. So we had a lot of coordination support from all the stakeholders to clear our backlog.
Okay, I remember there were some extensions given in terms of demurrage. You kept on explaining. Can you explain what the situation is?
Yeah, so we gave total rent-free period from March 16th up to April 13th, totally free, right? And then from April 14th to May 7th, we only charged the basic. We didn't charge any penalties, but only the basic charge. Because we had to do it, because otherwise, people are not clearing the cargo as long as we give the free period. So we didn't see any improvement, but the cargo was piling up. So we were scared that the cargo couldn't discharge due to this pile up. So that's why we had to, and things became normal with customs and all the stakeholders. We had a lot of consultation before doing it. On weekly basis, we had from the ministry and port side as well. And from May 8th onwards, we became normal. That means we started charging normal. But again, for special cargo, we have giving rent free, considering the requirement case by case. Now, let's say if there is any restriction from the exchange control or something, if they have not given license for someone who has discharged cargo, so they have to come up with the supporting document. Immediately, they have to clear the cargo. That is our request. Whoever is having any issue, right, got their documents clearance, immediately clear it. And then they can submit their request to the port with the supporting document, let's say exchange control. So all these, we need to have, so case by case, we still give concession, but it must be very reasonable due to the valid reason on the regulators or someone with the supporting documents.
Okay, fine. Now that you're online, is there any update on the current strike that is taking place? Do you think it will just, is it being resolved right now so that we won't have more COVID type situation?
Actually, this is the first time for the last so many years we just experienced that is also started just noon time today, but hopefully that will be resolved. Decisions will come very soon, because we have to take some the decision has to be taken to do what to do with the crates. So hopefully this decision will come very soon.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jayatissa. I'll move on to the industry. Mr. From ACFA, the General Secretary, Mr. Samsudeen, is available for us.
Hi.
Yeah, just want to know, I mean, you have been battling, having a battling situation in the post-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID. There have been various charges incurred by importers when clearing goods and all that. Can you share some insights, what has been, how supportive people have been and how we will resolve the issues?
Yes, thank you for that question. Actually, I must say this is blessing in disguise. COVID-19 has been a blessing in disguise, because we never came under one umbrella for quite a long period. Every time, one thing I must say, as we were always known, treated as wharf clerks, even the customs house agents, who has even maybe 30, 40 or 100 staff, still we were treated as wharf clerks. But this was an eye-opener, where everybody came under one umbrella, and we should thank the Director General of Customs and the SLPA chairman for taking the initiative as to take the leadership mantle and support the trade. It has been very fruitful right along from the very first day, because we were actually in the front of the battle, because there was nobody who could link to all these stakeholders other than the clearing agents. If you take whether it is BOI, import control, customs, SLPA, it is we who take the baton and run to all these places. We were, in fact, our wharf representatives were exposed so much to all these places. And I think that was the eye opener. Yeah, everybody thought this is the right time to move away from these traditional methods and go in, to come with suggestions and ways and means to do e-clearance. And I must say, all the stakeholders promptly actioned, and it was very beautiful to be under one umbrella to see all these things happening. To start off with, we were saddled with with getting curfew permits. Even the importers, wharf clerks, clearing agents, transporters. But immediately under one umbrella, we were able to say, propose to use our CHA badges as curfew permits, which the minister got involved, and the police readily accepted it, and that was our curfew pass for all those who are in the shipping trade. So it was from that point onwards, from day one, all of us have been working together, and it was easy to work also. And there were, like quite rightly Mr. Upul Justice said, there were 28,000 containers. I would say within 2 months, maybe within 2 months, most of these containers were cleared with the help of our team. And also, again, I must tell Mr. Jayawardena, I was just mentioning about the paperless. That was an eye-opener too, which we are still fighting, that leave aside this customs ordinance, which dates back from 1869, and periodically only few amendments have been made only for one particular reason. But this is the right time that we have to move forward, and this COVID-19 has given us this platform to move forward. And I think where these demurrages are concerned, if I go back on these demurrages, there was heavy demurrages which people couldn't bear. The importers couldn't bear up, and that is the reason, that there was one reason that they could not also clear. But since all the stakeholders came under one meeting room, it was resolved every day. It was basically within a week, everything came to light, and all the shipping agents, SLPA, customs, all got together and took decisions, and that is how it was resolved. So I think it was great to be in this team as well.
Right. Mr. Samsudin, just want to know how, with its current restrictions in place, is there any additional charges incurred in terms of clearing some of the restricted items? What are the real bottlenecks you're going through right now?
Yeah, basically, I think this temporary suspension came as a surprise to the trade, and it has really hit hard, especially the SMEs. They are finding difficult to come up, with new ideas to start up their business, because if you look at some of these items are not manufactured in Sri Lanka, but they depend a lot on these imports. So they are basically now going through hell to start up their businesses. We have been knocking at the door of Mrs. Damayanti, Import Control, to at least give some grant, some way of for them to run the business. So I think the government must consider this. Otherwise, there will be a lot of repercussions, because all these SMEs can't survive, and there are so many people working under them. You see, so it is true. Most of these cases, they are willing to. They have already pledged that they can hold on to the monies in the country and work on this open account 90 days and beyond. But unfortunately, because of this TS list, they cannot import. So I think it is high time the government really thought about it. And also there are some cargo which is lying in the port, which they can't clear because of this TS list, which some of them which has already come. And Mrs. Damayanti is very strict. She's saying, no way will I give you permission. So I think we have to basically think of this in terms of the small, medium enterprises, and as to how we could support to resolve these issues.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Samsudin. I'd like to move on to Ms. Damayanti Karunaratne again, because there was reference to her. Ms. Karunaratne.
I'm Ranjit Timala Surya.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Ranjit, for coming. People are still referring to a Treasury Secretary's list. Are we having too many lists right now, or has the department consolidated everything into one master list so that people will, or we will continue to still have various different lists people will have to keep referring to?
Actually, basically we initiated that with the list sent to the bankers on 24th of March. That is the start of this restricting items.
Okay.
So that was just the instruction to the bank. Then the CBSL issued another list. So that was we regularly maintain the list, and we were able to issue the gazette notification, first gazette notification on 16th of April. That was amended on 22nd of May. The final one was issued on 30th of June. So currently only 2 lists are valid, which is that means the publishing the gazette notification on 22nd of May and 30th of June. 30th of June list is kind of the amendment for the previous list.
Okay, so basically going forward, people shouldn't refer to TS list anymore.
Yeah, that is what we tried to do. So we identified some issues related to this TS list. Actually, let me give some idea regarding identification of these items. So the basic idea of introducing these restrictions was controlling the outward remittance and promoting the local manufacturing. So at the beginning, the items were categorized in 3 the categories. One is essential items, second one is non-essential, and the third one is locally manufactured goods. So the government wanted to control these items to protect the economy as well as promoting the local manufacturing. So therefore, the essential items were identified as petroleum products, pharmaceuticals, and some food items which are not manufacturing in Sri Lanka. And as non-essential, it was listed luxury items and some locally manufacturing food items, for instance, rice and some other fruits and vegetables. And there were the potential opportunities for promoting the local manufacturing. Therefore, basically, this is the strategy for identifying those items or the categorizing the list. So still we are maintaining both the list, TS and the credit list. With the new gazette notification, the credit period was extended, but we were able to shift some items to from TS list to the credit list, considering the concerns faced by the importers and exporters.
Okay, Ms. Karunaratha and Ranjit, thank you very much. Also, I need a more clear answer about the 1,000-odd containers stuck in the port, where I think whether clearance can be released, how fast or how focused are you in resolving that issue? Payments already made, they have already come before the listing. So how soon are you going to resolve that issue?
By the first gazette notification, the items which were arrived before 18th of April were totally released.
There are no more issues on that.
If the payment was completed before 16th of April, okay, those also were released. And the advance payment which were made more than 80%, up to 80% also were released. Okay. And currently the people are facing difficulties with the shipments which were initiated during that period of time and were unable to control or stop, and some of the instances were beyond their control because they are dealing with exporters. So we have to implement the regulations imposed by the government So there are some the practical issues are there. We are trying to resolve all these with the support of the committee established under the Gazette notification.
Thank you very much. We might come back to you if there are more questions. I'd like to move on to the two bankers in the panel. Starting from People's Bank, Nipunika, and also Prasad from Commercial Bank. In terms of, you see, various the sudden restrictions, both import restrictions and these payment changes to payment methods. How have you all sort of managed to maintain reliability and credibility with your corresponding banks and overall banking system? How have you all managed that challenge? Maybe Nipunika can come start as well. Online. Or Prasad?
Yes, thank you. It was a challenge, and I think we have been now facing these issues day-to-day basis, and try to assist the importers to clear their shipment. As you said, our corresponding banking network, where that we have relationships with foreign banks, even some are having their local offices here in Colombo, that they play a vital role in servicing our LCs and other trade finance transactions. Now in this particular situation, we have to get their assistance converting site LCs into usance terms, because some regulations imposed by the Import and Export Control Department Gazette, we have to release only under credit terms. Sometimes we may have opened those LCs under site basis. Then we receive documents under site basis, need immediate payment. Then we had to take up with these matters with our corresponding bank network and approach them to convert such site LCs into usance terms. We had to encourage our customers, importers, to take up with their suppliers to allow their banks to convert such bills into credit terms. However, it's a challenge because there are other options also available. About the LCs, customers can resort for DA bills under avalization, because when it is avalization, bank avalization is involved, supplier gets the bank undertaking to pay them at maturity. Then they can get down the documents under collection DA basis with a particular tenor, with a particular credit term, and once it is avalized, then the bank undertaking is there to pay them at maturity. Similarly, once LC is confirmed by the confirming bank, there also supplier is in a better position to receive payment upfront, because they have their facilities with the foreign banks with whom that they deal. Then they can approach that bank, so that bank can pay them, even though it's a usance LC. It's a DA avalized bill. It's up to the negotiating bank or the presenting bank, remitting bank, to release the payment to the supplier. In those instances, our corresponding banks support us, but that there are incidents that some suppliers, they do not wish to allow our clients to importers to convert those bills into usance terms. There are some reputational issues that as banks we have to stand on our commitment because we handle our LCs under UCP, the UCP guidelines, the UCP rules issued by ICC Paris. Then once letter of credit is issued, we have to handle it according to those rules. Then if when the country regulations are there, we have to abide by the country regulations also. Then we won't be able to meet our commitment under the LC. Then it will be a challenge in future whether our LCs are acceptable in international markets.
Good. Thank you very much. Is Nipunika here as well? All right, okay. Mr. Prasanna, just drawing from what Prasad was saying, there is this reputational risk facing Sri Lanka in terms of monitoring contracts. When some of these controls are considered, was that factored in? One is the reputational risk of dealing with Sri Lankan banks, Sri Lankan importers also. What are the implications?
Of course, what I see is that if you want us to, participate in a controller consultative sessions, to address if such issues, of course, we are, willing to take part and give our valuable contribution.
Okay.
If you have a kind of a risk in this nature. But commenting on the fact that explained by the Mr. Prasad, but I would suggest to say that he was talking about these UPAS LCs, where the some foreign because this regulation I clearly went through and say that certain things are temporarily suspended and certain items are can be imported under the credit terms where the foreign buyers are willing to offer a credit period where they are reluctant to do it, so that cannot be done. So the government policy, the objective of the government policy to some extent to discourage the import in line with these ongoing issues. If you convert the, site LCs, to kind of a usance LCs, what happens is that the corresponding banking will pay to the suppliers and will allow the customers to import these goods. So that will, of course, some kind of encouraging the goods to be imported into the country. Perhaps the government policy would become ineffective if it is the case. But that aspect need to be addressed, because I can remember that some of the banks have also requested from us to let them pay these undertake these UPAS. But we were just discussing with them, and we were just telling that it would not be the right time to do it in view of these ongoing issues, because that the government, as Import Control Department rightly said, that they are trying to protect the foreign exchange market in terms of controlling the outflows, and also they want to give some impetus to the domestic producers. So something addition to your question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to add one thing. Actually, I didn't discuss about UPAS LCs here. That when we issue a confirmed letter of credit, if you have a collection DA with bank avalization, it is up to the supplier under their facilities available with their banks. Because once a LC is confirmed, then it is a confirmed LCs that we open. It is not a UPAS LC that we open a confirmed letter of credit, and we issue a collection DA with bank avalization. That means that there's a definite undertaking to pay at maturity, like a normal usance LC. Then it is, once our agreement is there, it is up to the supplier, the beneficiary, to take up with his bank. It's like a export bill. A Sri Lankan exporter go to his bank and get it discounted. It is not under our request. It is, once LC is confirmed, there is a better option to the exporter in the other country to go to his bank and get the bill discounted and receive the payment. Okay. That is what I mentioned, because rather than paying at site, in line with the import and control regulation gazette, we can assist our clients when they want to convert site transactions into usance terms. Now, there have been supply under site terms. Now they want to convert it to a usance transaction. then we can make use of our corresponding banks to open LCs on nuisance terms, and they are actually facilitating accepting our nuisance LCs, and whenever we need to add confirmation, we issue confirm LCs. It's not a UPass transaction.
Yeah, valid point. I just want to know, I mean, I want to bring Shanil into this conversation. I mean, some of these sudden restrictions and payment methods right now, because of a domestic situation, we are doing it without any adequate notice. Some are against the ICC rules of regulations or engagement. Shanil, do you like to shed some lights on how, how are we sort of kind of, in terms of international reputation, what kind of a challenge we will have going forward in trying to build credibility?
Chanel, just a minute before you, may I interrupt, Nista? Sorry to interrupt. We have good news. The port strike is called off.
Okay, thank
you. The port strike has been called.
Okay.
That's what I said. We don't keep it for long.
Shanil, yeah. Shanil, I think you're on mute. Shanil, you're on mute.
Yes, hello. These are international rules that have been derived. ICC is 100 years old. So it's actually, they are very old rules that have been updated every 10 years. Like say, for an example, Incoterms are updated every 10 years, and we had the latest rules 2020. Same with DocTex and all those rules for LCs and so on. So basically, I think at the end of the day, the country's regulations and the country's law prevails. But then they need to strike a balance between these two. What Prasad said is about the reputational risk is also a very great thing, because the reason is some of the suppliers and the bankers might say, no, we don't want to touch Sri Lanka in the future. So, but in the same time, we also have to preserve our exchange, right? So maybe that we need to, I personally think this import control to a certain extent is a necessity, but under certain checks and balances.
Okay, thank you. Question to BOI team. I know you explained that all BOI related imports can be facilitated, all that stuff, but there's still a lot of paperwork to be done, a lot of compliances to be done. This is fine, but at the same time, government wants investors to come and invest. That is partly because of, one is in terms of development, other one is getting more debt-free reserves in the country. How is BOI managing going at the same time marketing for investors to come to Sri Lanka, when on the other side existing guys have been slammed with various controls or new procedures?
Yeah, I like to put it different way. So now it's a really country promotion. This time I think the government led by His Excellency and the Chairman, the Director General and the Manager of the BOI, trying to take this as an opportunity to Sri Lanka. If I say now there's the way when the investors deciding their investment destination, in the early days they try to find their investment destination where the industry factor cost is lower. That is the factor that we bang in late 80s. Now the scenario has changed now in the international scenario, and then we are trying to capitalize the international perception on Sri Lanka. The government of Sri Lanka, the way they manage the risk, manage the risk when the entire world faced the epidemic situation. So then we have now plus point compared to the world. The Sri Lankan government has managed the situation, taking the attention of the investors who are trying to put their investment or trying to relocate their investment. They now take Sri Lanka as a country where they're managing the risk very positively, professionally. And for example, now there are companies like Japanese, and they are trying to relocate their businesses, where the BOI and the government is trying to bang on their opportunity to bring them to Sri Lanka. And the government is trying to give a package for the tailor-made proposals. So if there are situations we are receiving proposals from most of the companies trying to relocate their business to this region. So then we are ready, the government is and the BOI is ready to give a more better package, more better incentive package with if they come with the tailor-made proposals. So then, and at the same time, now SDP package is in line now. Now we have been receiving proposals, and we have given already for a few bigger investments to facilitate to bring FDI. And at the same time, now if you take apparel industry, now as you know that the out of entire exports, 5 to 6 billion have been absorbed by the apparel industry. With the situation that has gone for a 6, but still now with this situation, BOI manage well, start reopening the factories within the first month of the COVID, and with the hard work of Chairman DG and all the team, and with the support of police and the Tri-Forces and COVID Center, we have managed to reopen most of the factories within a 1 month period, and we managed to restart. So we start from 25% to say 100% operation within few months, and at the same time we manage with the support of the whole industrialists, 0 victims of the factories in the free trade zone. That is a 1+ point. That is how we try to bring the message to the international world. Sri Lanka is very capable to manage the risk in this type of situation compared to other regional countries. That is 1 point. At the same time, now this apparel industry, they got a different opportunity in the world. Now there's more than 42 companies, the apparel companies. They have got the orders for personal protective equipment and the face mask. And within say 2 weeks' time, Chairman the BOI, the board has given approval for this time and targeting 1 billion export orders for a new markets. That is how we are trying to manage.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't think it's a temporary, there's a drawback, but we are trying to capitalize the situation with the help of the government and all the teams and with the industries.
I think there is no health risk. Yeah, I think there is no health risk, but there's a payment risk, I guess, for investors.
I think Mrs. Karunaratne and our tariff committee has supported well the BOI to bring the operation smooth now. Only very few occasions that import are stuck.
Okay, yeah, that's
we are in 100% operation right now.
Yeah, yes. I just want to ask. This is from both Ms. Karunaratne and Prasanna. I mean, end of the day, in 2 months' time, how would we know how successful all these regulations were in stemming the outflow of foreign exchange? I mean, do you have any numbers right now where you are tracking? How much do we sort of, if there were no restrictions, how much of foreign exchange payments were you talking about? Inflow in terms of, is there a number so that people, even the industry, feel confident that they are being forced to comply for a good cause? Is there a way to both from Ms. Karunaratne and Prasanna to see whether anything, any data is available?
Let me reply that from the import-export control perspective, we don't keep such record and we don't have that kind of information with us. We just implement the regulation to support the other stakeholders to control these things. We don't have such records with us.
Yeah, that's right. I think I understand your point, but I'm just saying because end of the day, you'll get a lot of criticism for making lives of importers a nightmare. Mr. Prasanna, any idea being in terms of foreign exchange? I mean, what figure are we looking at trying to preserve outflow of foreign exchange so precious right now?
Of course, this department has not have not done any forecasts with regard to the expected imports to be within the upcoming months. But and of course, it is not the Foreign Exchange Department of the Economic Research Department only, collect the imports on these trade transactions. Of course, what they do is every month they just release these data for the press, and also publish in their publications. I think those will be available for the people and or for the market.
Okay, let me rephrase the question. But you will be held responsible for the effectiveness of these new regulations, right? Both department and you will be responsible to ensure that these measures are very effective in achieving the government objectives.
You're asking from?
No, yeah, both from you and Mrs. From the Department of Exchange Control.
Of course, whatever the directions in line with this import restriction, whatever the issued by the central bank were lapsed by the 20th June. So there is no more involvement of the Bank Supervision or the Foreign Exchange Department as far as this import restriction are concerned. So it has been superseded by this regulation issued by the Import Control Department.
Okay,
so
right.
What is now what is effective is their regulation right now.
Thank you for clarifying. For the department, Ms. Karunaratne mentioned that until further notice, is it kind of open-ended? Can the industry, private sector can't predict when you say open-ended until further notice means it's because some of the restrictions were extended by 6 months, whereas your gazette says that until further notice. Can you clarify on that?
Yeah, actually, initially that was for 3 months' time, 90 days.
Yeah.
From the 16th of April. But considering the effect of these the regulations, the committee decided to extend the period as until further notice.
Okay.
Currently, I think no one is in a position to predict the end of the period, but most probably within a short period of time, we suppose that considering the situation, economic situation there, that will be decided by the committee.
Okay, thank you. I think we have come to the 1.5 hours of discussion. I like to wrap it up with few common questions to all the panelists, and whoever likes to sort of share their perspective is welcome. One suggestion that we got, I think ICC got from the industry is that can we come up with a supply chain ombudsman, because there are different customs is involved, board BOI is involved, SLP is involved, imports controller, director merchant shipping, different parties. I mean, yes, COVID brought us together, as Mr. Samsudin said, during the crisis, but now with the crisis more or less being managed well, people can go into their comfort zones, complacency. Whether the need for a supply chain ombudsman is relevant going forward, because we still have some outstanding issues to be resolved.
Yeah, Nisa, can I just explain something on that? Can I?
Yes, yes, you can.
Yeah. Basically, I think this supply chain ombudsman is because we need to move fast when these issues are there, because sometimes there have been instances some containers have got stuck for 3 months because of these 3 weeks because of these approvals, and ultimately we had to even go to the Treasury Secretary to get some clarifications and so on. So basically, if we have maybe even a committee, a supply chain ombudsman committee, where some members of the chambers are also mentioned with these departmental heads, which will meet at the moment. I think only the departmental heads are meeting, like the BOI, import control, and so on. But they also have to get the view of the private sector, the real importer and the exporter, who is facing the problem. So their issues also has to be discussed. So then it's a balanced approach. They can see, say for an example, if there are foreign investors who have invested here and in Vietnam, and they find things are when they are having 100% exports and their raw materials are get stuck in here for a few weeks to get approvals. Obviously, they are not going to come here. They will shift those production to another country. So we need to keep these exports coming into Sri Lanka and to facilitate this. So actually, ICC's role is to make sure that things are facilitated better under the Sri Lankan rules and regulations. Also, can I make a few comments that we have received from the industry, from the members?
No, I think yeah, you can. I'll just take some of the other things. We are also having questions from people from the live feed as well.
Sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
Also, the other one maybe just to customs, Mr. Jabardhan, I think about getting the customs to about requesting BOI Custec entry passing work on Saturdays. Whether the sorry, that's not this is for the one request. I don't know whether BOI Custec entry passing to work on Saturdays, which was done all these years, but from last week it has been stopped, which is a major drawback on the supply chain. Any insights from the panel?
Yes, I think this is because the reason is, say, for an example, last minute imports comes, last minute exports come. I mean, during the curfew time, even the document, there was a delay because the planes are not coming in and so on. So basically, sometimes the exporters, somehow try to finish that container and put it into the vessel that is leaving, right? And they have to pass these entries at a last minute sometimes. So a Saturday, which the BOI has enjoyed over the years, has suddenly been stopped. I think there's something wrong in that decision making, because all these years when it has been happening, and then suddenly the Saturday working has been stopped by the BOI for passing entries.
Okay, thank you.
Can I comment on that? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay, right. So with regard to the paperless trade, so we have launched this paperless facility for exporters and importers as well. So we started this process from 12th April from export. So exporters should not come to BOI office and they can submit their export Custec online. So finally they will get the printout from the approved Custec and go to the cargo verification with the cargo. So that is why the Saturday the office was closed, because any urgent import, so we have opened the office at Air Cargo Terminal for any cargo clearance. So, and also the export. So therefore there's no any harassment or any process delay with regard to the Saturday. So they can submit online. We want to encourage them to submit paperless. So without coming to the office. So sometime on Saturday we get only 20-25 import Castecs, right? But exporters are facilitated through the paperless. There's no any delay on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to take this question. I'll come. Any comments on this particular thing? I just want to say, explain the way forward for the detained items requiring ICL. Nothing is taking place at the moment. What's happening? What's the way out for the detained items requiring ICL? Anyone?
ICL items, the items which were under import control license are banned. So that I don't think the import control department will issue a directive on that, because generally they must have imported with the ICL in hand, but because of the ban, they cannot clear them. So that is my understanding.
Okay, department can.
Let me add something for that. Actually, that is the mandatory requirement for the importers to have a license in advance. So if they are importing without a license, there will be a penalty for that. And sometimes we issue the license considering the situation there. So a lot of importers face difficulties of obtaining license during that lockdown period. we considered those things, and sometimes we gave concession for the penalty too. But with introducing the new regulation for restricting items, some importers have intentionally used this opportunity for importing items without a license. Some of those have been detained by the customs. Now we are not in a position to issue a license which were imported, items imported after imposing these regulations.
Okay, right. There is one more question. Can you please clarify whether for vehicle parts, the credit period of 90 days as mentioned in the May 21st Gazette is still valid after 15 July?
Yeah, that is valid actually. That has been shifted from the TS list to the credit list this time. But the period for the credit has been extended up to 180 days.
180, yeah?
Sorry, yes, 180.
Okay, right, fine. Thank you very much. Just one more question in terms of maybe Port can also talk about it. We're talking about SME, small and medium people who can't clear their LCL cargo shipments from the port. There is a suggestion that whether a credit facility via a bank guarantee can be considered to transfer to the cargo to a SLP, a bonded warehouse. Is that possible? Where they, based on a credit facility or a bank guarantee, or transfer to the SLPA bonded warehouse. These are LCL shipments.
For LCL now, these they can now LCL cargo now. If you look at the total LCL coming to the port is about 5%. 5% of the total import coming as LCL. It's not only LCL; it is coming as LCL with transshipment, with multi-country consolidation, on-report rate. All is 5% of the total import. That is roughly about 30,000 TEUs we are talking, right? So I don't see any reason why we have the bonded facility that is subject to the custom approval. They can import specially cigarette liquor and marine paint and like that. But the LCL, the consignments are smaller, so they don't need that kind of a bond unless it's a very high value special cargo. So there is no requirement, I would see, to give credit facility or something like that, because they have to pay then and there, because ours is a storage rent. We only handle, and they have to pay the wharfage and the storage rent. That's it. And the rates are very, very minimal, and we have not revised for the last almost 20 years.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Mr. Nisna, just to shed some light about that. Actually, I think most of the industry people are not aware that there's going to be almost 1,000 containers being abandoned because of these burning issues which is happening now with this TS, as well as huge demurrages to be paid. So, in fact, our association, our ACFA, our association, we have proposed this to the chairman SLPA and the stakeholders to support this, including the customs, to support these people to come out of their businesses. What we have suggested is a bond facility where all this cargo can be transferred to a warehouse, bonded, and then under customs supervision. And for example, if he has one container full, say, cartons, he can't pay the full duty amount, neither can he pay the demurrages. So what we have suggested is part by part. Maybe they can take out 10 cartons, pay duty for that, and then clear that, and then gradually solve all these issues. Otherwise, what will happen is this cargo will be abandoned and it will be put for sale. So putting for sale is another process which will take a longer period. Some may perish, some may not have the value of it, and the customs will not be able to recover any duty. So considering all that, we came up with this suggestion that to support the trade. So I think actually customs is also in favor, as well as the port authority. So we are working towards it for the benefit of the traders. And
okay. These restricted items, or
it is it's all sort of items which is in that, because some of them has not been able to even pay and get their documents released, on LC or, things like that, So it is actually, it's going to, it is going to affect the trade very much. So we have to do something. We have to get together and support this to see that, all these people come out of this rut. So that is the situation.
Thank you. And there is one more suggestion also involves ACFA and ICC, whether the customs can recognize customs house agents who do not have any customs inquiries to be given a gold card CHA recognition. This was done some time ago, but whether they can be recognized on a yearly basis. Is that possible from customs?
A pertinent question, because Mr. Jayawardhan is the DC director in charge of the CHS.
Yes, actually the first thing is that they are requesting for a certificate, annual, this kind of thing. So we are working on it. During the tenure of the previous Director General, it has been approved. So, but because of the COVID situation and all, and we couldn't work further. But first thing, I think the awarding the certificate is the number one thing, because it is most important. And at the same time, we want to regulate that industry, because there are many number of clearing agents. So they are into different nefarious acts. So that we want to, with the help of ACFA, we want to get a regularized body there. So that is our ambition at the moment.
Yeah, can I make a comment on that, sir? Basically, because you see sometimes some of these CHAs, they have been violating customs regulations, and then they leave that company, go and join another one or start on their own. So I think that fit and proper procedure of giving the CHA license and the recognition, there are certain companies who are never violated, who should be recognized, so that they know whom to go to. So basically, they could go and get their services from a proper agent who will advise them properly.
Yes, the suggestion is very correct. So, but actually we cannot implement it immediately. So step by step we have to do it, because there are many number of registered clearing agents with us. Many. Some are individually running their business, some are as companies, and we cannot deprive their job also. So gradually we have to do it in a particular way, so that everybody will be benefited.
I think just a suggestion to the customs. If you look at in our Asian region, countries like India, they have the registered, the Association of Clearing Agents is basically an arm of the customs. What they do is all these clearing agents have to register under the Association of Clearing and Forwarding Agents, and the agents, the ACFA basically recommends to the customs, and if there's any fraudulent acts happening, they are held responsible. So we are not basically we are not asking you to say have a high-handed authority, but to support the governments, to support the customs with where we can eliminate all these type of activities and have a clear path. Because like I said in my at the beginning, it is very unfortunate that only in Sri Lanka and few of these in the Asian region that this trade is treated badly. Basically, we are known as the authorized economic operators. If you look at countries like Singapore, Australia, all those countries, actually we are in a higher mantle than this. In this country, because of a few people who have been doing all these fraudulent acts, everybody is put in one basket. So I think this is the right time to make these changes. Like quite rightly, Shanil said, I mean, we have to be categorized. People who are, with who has had a good long history with good records should be recognized to have this this trade to run well. So I think this is the ideal time where even this license basically which was issued to the CHAs, it was I think 20 years ago we were issued this license, but suddenly it was stopped, and nobody knows why it was stopped. And thanks to the previous DGC, we had to lobby so much, and then there was, some of the officers didn't like it. But then I'm very happy that Mr. Jayawardhan is there, who is a very understanding person of both sides, the private as well as the government side. So we hope within the next few weeks that we will get this license sorted, and then going forward, even to categorize the CHAs in such a way that nobody will go out of their jobs, but they stay in the jobs, but then categorize and have some decent path for all of us.
Okay, thank you very much from that. I'm sure post-COVID, given the challenges, there'll be a bit of a shakedown in the industry. So the right guys, the strong guys will remain in business going forward. We have sort of exceeded our time, and everyone have, I think, in terms of commitment. So I'd like to recognize all the panelists, Mr. Prasanna, W.S. Prasanna from the Central Bank, Jayatissa from the Port Authority for deputizing for General Daratnayaka, particularly the team from the Import and Export Control, Ms. Damayanti Karunaratna, Mr. Ranjit Vimalasuriya, and also from the Customs, Mr. Jayawardhana, and BOI team as well, Mr. Mahinda Ramanayaka and Vijay Kulatilaka as well, and Prasad from Commercial Bank, Shanil, and Mr. Samsudin for your valuable time. I think we covered a lot of areas. I'm sure going forward there'll be more issues, but I think here we managed to sort of bring everyone together to sort of brainstorm what the issues are, and also understand that these are challenging times from in terms of foreign exchange control and import substitution, and I'm sure we can have a more healthy dialogue going forward in terms of resolving this issue. So thank you very much on behalf of the ICC Sri Lanka Daily FT for your valuable time and sharing your frank insights. Thank you very much, and we shall meet again for all the webinar participants through another webinar shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nista.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to be in this forum.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nista.